New economic sanctions for its invasion of Ukraine as deaths and injuries mount.
The president also delivered a stark warning to Russian leader Vladimir Putin. And WGN's Mike Lowe is live in our newsroom now with the latest round of penalties. Mike?
Ray and Micah, good evening. Today, the president said that if Russian aggression extends beyond the border of Ukraine into NATO territory, the, quote, full force of American power will be unleashed. He called the invasion of Ukraine premeditated and unjustified.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
During an afternoon address to the nation, President Joe Biden condemned Russian leader Vladimir Putin and said the United States will impose crippling sanctions on Russia as punishment for launching a full-scale war in Ukraine.
Putin's actions betray his sinister vision for the future of our world, one where nations take what they want by force. But it is a vision that the United States and freedom-loving nations everywhere will oppose.
The president said the U.S. government would impose stiff sanctions on Russia that would cut the access of Russia's largest banks and companies from U.S. financial markets, restrict exports of technology to Russia, and freeze trillions of dollars in Russian assets, including those of Russia's elite wealthy families.
These are people who personally gain from the Kremlin's policies, and they should share in the pain.
The president said the U.S. would not deploy troops to engage Russians in Ukraine, but he ordered 7,000 more U.S. troops to Europe to reassure NATO allies that the U.S. would fight if Russians advance into NATO territory.
Our forces are not and will not be engaged in the conflict with Russia in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East. As I made crystal clear, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power.
The president's response comes as Russian forces continued a full-scale military assault attacking Ukraine from the north, south, and east. Air raid sirens and explosions continuously rattled the country, and thousands are attempting to flee to neighboring countries.
What is going on, and it's awful.
Ukraine's president vowed to continue to fight, but he acknowledged today at least 137 people have been killed and hundreds have been wounded.
They are literally within miles.
U.S. Senator Dick Durbin returned to Chicago this afternoon from a trip to visit Illinois troops at a NATO camp in Lithuania.
Those soldiers, Illinois soldiers sitting at that camp, NATO camp in Lithuania, weren't thinking twice about Democrats and Republicans. They're thinking about getting home to the safety of their families.
And Putin defended the invasion, saying he was protecting Russia. He threatened any entity that would stand in his way with consequences, quote, the world has never seen, which was interpreted by many as a veiled nuclear threat.
America stands up to bullies. We stand up for freedom. This is who we are.
And Senator Dick Durbin was scheduled to receive a Department of Defense briefing on U.S. troop deployment this afternoon. He is the co-chair of the Senate Ukraine Caucus and the Baltic Freedom Caucus and says he will meet with members of the Chicago Ukrainian community tomorrow. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Earlier today, members of Chicago